Welcome, everybody. I'm Teresa Harvey, President and CEO of North Orange County Chamber. As we celebrate Women's History Month, the Chamber is pleased again to present our S.H.E Influences program. Who ever expected that after postponing last year's program and later taking it virtually, that we would again be virtual this year? But we're so glad to be with you. The S.H.E Influence, also known as Speaks, Hears, Empowers, brings together successful and influential women to address issues impacting society and business today. As we present now our fourth year of this powerful program, I'm reminded that never before have women been so important. Never before have women been brought on and put in the position of demonstrating ambition, intelligence, and strength. I invite you to join us for the next couple weeks to hear from influential leaders as they share their unique stories and expertise on leadership, wealth management, and wellness. We could not do these programs without our sponsors, and I'm very pleased to recognize the following: St. Jude Medical Center, Crittenden Services for Children and Families, Farmers and Merchants Bank, California State University Fullerton, Roundtree Gardens, America's First Credit Union, and Needle as this year's sponsors. Please join me as we share a message from our sponsor, California State University Fullerton.
In a world seeking answers, what does it take to advance discovery? To push the limits of innovation? To inspire the next generation? It takes a Titan.
Thank you, Cal State Fullerton, for your ongoing support of this and our other programs. Tonantzin Oseguera encapsulates the growth of women and how education can be important in shaping the life of an individual. A first-generation college graduate born and raised in Mexico City, VP Oseguera was appointed Vice President of Student Affairs at California State University Fullerton following a comprehensive competitive national search. Her appointment is a culmination of a lifelong passion for equitable student-centered higher education and a passion and pride for Cal State Fullerton. Dr. O, as she's sometimes referred to, is a leader with tremendous poise, intelligence, decision-making ability, and strength. She approaches her job with a student-first approach and contagious smile that have made her a beloved figure at the California State University Fullerton community. More importantly, through her expertise and passion for retention, care, and persistence for all students with a great focus on underserved populations, she has led directly to improving and narrowing Cal State Fullerton's opportunity gap and rising graduation rates. Please join me in welcoming Dr. O as she presents her program, Life Should Come with a Soundtrack, Girl Empowerment. Welcome, Dr. O.
Thank you, Teresa. I appreciate that. Yes, students often call me Dr. O, and my friends often also call me T or TO, and I am completely fine with it. It's great. It's a good. It's just nice to be familiar that way. So in thinking about, thank you for having me. This, I think, is it morning still? Yes, I think it's a little bit still morning. But thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Just being here and being able to share a little bit about my story and Cal State Fullerton and why I think for us Cal State Fullerton is just doing some great stuff. I think we're the crown jewel of the CSU system. I know there's other campuses out there, and some of you may have attended some of those other campuses, but I really do think that Cal State Fullerton is diamond, is truly. So in thinking about today, I how to best share, I think, my story in a way that is lighthearted, and also perhaps informative, and we can just some questions around leadership and how I've managed some things. I was thinking about in particular, it's the hears and empowers. I thought, how okay, is for me, music has really been just instrumental in my life. I've often thought how if there's a way for music to play in the background, right? When you're going through life, I've always thought that is pretty interesting, certainly in movies that occurs. And I thought, I often think of my life where there's music. So I wanted to just share that a little bit about. So I'm going to invite you also to think about what kinds of songs and what has inspired you to be a different person, has inspired you to keep going, has inspired you to think about your own leadership journey, right? And what has propelled you that way. And so I will give you just a little snapshot of some of the music that's played an influence in my life. And if I had my own movie of what those songs would be. As Teresa alluded, I was born and raised in Mexico City, and predominantly by my father, who's a single father, and my grandmother, who would take care of me. And so this is actually the picture of her album cover, and it's a little fuzzy, but it's Edi Gourmet and Trio Los Panchos. Maybe some of you have heard of them, but certainly for me, you know, it was my grandmother would play this in the background a lot, lots of love songs. And so I was very fortunate to, even though our family didn't have a lot of means, we had a lot of love. And certainly my grandmother played an important role for me in how I think about love, how I think about serving people, how I've thought about just the work that I do, my life's work, and what I do every day. So one of my favorite songs from Edie Gourmet and Los Panchos is Amor Amor, and it's love love. And so if you have an opportunity, it is really old school. So if there are some younger audience members watching this, you may have to uh, go on YouTube, Google it a little bit. But I for me that was a part of it. And it just in Mexico there was a lot of things occurring at the time. And at the age of 13, I think actually 12 and a half, my father had what I consider the talk with me. And so he shared with me that he was just very concerned about the political pieces that were occurring in Mexico, his work that he was involved with. He was very much an activist and a teacher, um, and that he felt that he couldn't really take care of me and make sure that my safety was guaranteed. And he also didn't see really a future for me in Mexico. There's not at the time not a lot of opportunities for women, unless you had means to be able to get into a private school, which we of course did not. And so my dad made the very difficult decision of contacting my mom. They'd been separated for a while. She was here in the United States, and letting her know that he would basically be kind of putting me on a bus and sending me to Tijuana, where she would have to pick me up and figure out a way to ostensibly get me undocumented into the United States. So I didn't know the language. I will say that I did not know English. I really hadn't studied or known much about the United States, other than what little pieces of information we would get in school, which was not much. We didn't focus on the United States, obviously. So that was an experience for me as well. Coming to the United States, really living with my mom for the first time. She had left when I was 5 years old, so I didn't really know her. And trying to figure out how to survive in a culture that I didn't really know, um, with my mom that I didn't really know. So that was different for both her and I. But fortunately, she too liked Edie Gourmet and Trio Los Panchos, and we were able to make a connection around music as well for her and I to try and navigate getting to re-know each other. And for me, and it was actually I learned that Edie Gourmet was indeed not Mexican, but and that she had learned to sing those songs in Spanish, and that her first language was actually also English. So thought that was interesting. Um, One of the first gifts that I received when I came to the United States from my uncle was actually a small little radio, and it was a little old, and it could really only get to stations like old school with the antenna, and had to kind of jiggle it to get a good signal. And the only two radio stations that it would get was KUSE and what is now known as KPCC. And so he had shared with me that one of the best ways that I could learn English is to listen to music. So I started listening a little bit to KUSC, and I would turn it on in the mornings. Of course, it was all classical though. So I started to learn a little bit of English or practice my English with, it wasn't necessarily music, but Carl Castle in the morning would do the morning news. So that was one way. I then though discovered what I thought was the best radio station, which was KRS 101. And at the time, they played oldies mostly from like the 40s and 50s and 30s. I think now they consider oldies from like the 80s and 90s, which that's a little strange for me. But I started to listen to that music, and I really enjoyed it. I didn't know what they were saying, but the melodies just kind of filled me, I think, with that same spirit of love and energy that I had felt. And slowly I would start to be able to repeat the words. So I know and have a repertoire in my head of a lot of songs from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. But one of the people that I really liked the voice and how they sounded was Billie Holiday. And at the time, of course, I didn't know much about her and her journey. And talk about someone who is just amazing and did some really good work that most folks don't know about. If you hadn't had a chance to see the movie on Hulu, Billie Holiday versus the United States, strongly encourage it. It's great. Talk about her, not just her musicology, but what she was able to do as a person. Great, great songs. But one of the first ones that I learned from her was Body and Soul. And so I would sing that and be able to repeat it, which is pretty strange for a 13, 14-year old walking around singing these songs. But I really enjoyed them, and people would get a kick out of them that I knew them. So but it meant a lot to me to be able to do that. That's how I learned English. It was my introduction to um, the American school system. I was taking ESL classes. I graduated from La Mirada High School, and I had a good guidance counselor that would talk to me. I mean, I had expected that I would graduate from high school and then work to be able to help my family, and that's pretty much as far as I had thought. I was trying to get acclimated to right a new cultural new world order to some regard. But this particular guidance counselor said, you're really adept. You have some talent. I She recognized that I was picking up English rather fast. I don't know if it was the music that was helping or not, but she realized that I had some educational skills in terms of being able to learn quickly, and apply myself. And so she pulled me out of the ESL classes and put me in some of the honors classes. And I had excuse me, I had much more advanced classes in math in Mexico than I had here in the United States. And thankfully, math is a universal language. So I excelled in my math courses. And so they took me out of eighth grade math and actually put me in 10th grade math, because that's where I was. Um, and she let me know, listen, you have to be able to get involved in things, and get connected to do different activities in high school so that you can get private scholarships is the only way that you'll be able to afford to go to college. And at the time, I had never disclosed that I was an undocumented student. At the time, there was no protections for anybody that was undocumented. Actually, you didn't talk about it. You kind of tried to hide it for sure. But I think somehow she knew. She never brought it out into the open either, but she was very much, and I appreciate that now, many years looking back at how she was able to do that and to encourage me to go to college and seek out the appropriate ways to do it. So for me, that was definitely a connection point. of what I would be able to do. At the time, 90s, I'm somewhat of a, I guess, a 90s kid to that regard. You may or may not recognize this band. They're called Breeders. And one of the songs that I think I would say fills the existential angst, but also the fact that it was three women, and it was really the only band at the time that it was three women who were, very much on the forefront of grunge music, so to speak. Was this group, and I connected with it because I felt that there was more that I could do, and it was really the first time that I felt like I can do more. I can go to college. I can be able to apply myself. There's things that I still have to give, and so I also connected to my grandmother and her lessons of you always give to people, service to people, and that's really what you're brought on this earth to be able to do. So this music, I think, in some ways, funny enough or oddly enough, inspired me to be able to feel, I think, more confident of being able to achieve some things. So I did. I applied. I was able to get a scholarship to Colorado State. Mind you, I had never been to Colorado. I had never seen the snow. And so when I got to Colorado State, I same thing. Get got connected to a lot of different activities in college. I became involved in a sorority. I became involved in research for my program. I had a great advisor that helped me to find opportunities where I would be able to get private grants and private scholarships for the very same reason, because at the time I was still undocumented, trying to get through the higher education system in the United States. So I didn't really qualify for, federal financial aid. You have to be a citizen for that. So for me, it was also the first time that I felt like, okay, I can continue. Um, there's different pieces that I can offer, and at the same time, that's when I had a mentor that asked and let me know if I had ever thought about doing higher education, if I had thought about working in student affairs, and I didn't know what that was. So I asked him, well, what is that? And he said, it's working at a university. It's working to serve students. It's working, to be able to get more students connected into the education system. And I liked school. I was fairly good at it, had very high grades, a good GPA. And I thought, wow, I could really get a job. I could really work. And at a university, that's, first in my family to go to school, first in my family to, graduate from high school. And, I was about to graduate with a bachelor's in science. That was my background. And I felt like I could really make a difference for students who had similar experiences to my own, and also for students that maybe felt like they didn't know what to do when it came to navigating higher education. How do you navigate a university if you've never had either a family member, a parent, or someone that can teach you how to do that? Or even sometimes when you have those resources, um, they're not always available to you, right? In terms of your family. So I felt really connected and felt like, boy, this is what I really want to do. So I then went on to get a master's in higher education student affairs. That was kind of the next step that was recommended, more schooling. So for 2 years, I attended the University of Vermont, and I also worked for the University of Vermont. I started working there as an admissions counselor. So I did a rotation of both admissions and financial aid. It was also at this time that I was truly blessed to be one of the few folks that is undocumented that I actually had a path towards citizenship. My mom had applied for me, obviously, um, for me to stay here, and so I was granted residency. So I then had a path to citizenship, as well as I was able to work. I had a work permit. I started on that path, which was it completely changed my life and the opportunities that I was able to do. Prior to that, I could really not necessarily work. It had to do jobs that paid cash. Because there was no way for me to access that. So this, I think, was also one opportunity that I felt like, wow, I can keep going, so to speak. And so I went to UVM, And it was challenging. Not just because I was far away from family. I had been far away from family while I attended Colorado State for 3 years. I finished my degree. I was one of those students that I don't highly recommend it, but because of finances, it was easier for me. I completed a 4-year program in 3 years by taking 21 units almost every single semester. And I was able to get out faster, and it was because I wouldn't have to necessarily pay as much or rely on continuing to get some scholarships in that way. So I went to UVM, very much further away than Colorado State, almost at the exact opposite end of California, as I learned. And so I didn't go home much, and it was pretty isolated for me. It was also when I started to have some conversations with colleagues and peers around education and access to education. And I think I had naively assumed that because it's education that people would be open to ensuring that there was equity and justice when it came to access for folks that normally or historically hadn't had an opportunity to gain access to education. And I was finding out that that wasn't necessarily the case, that there was long held beliefs about who's prepared to go to college, who's not prepared to go to college, how students are tracked. So for me, it was pretty disheartening and eye-opening. I got into some different kind of music with Annie Lennox, and this is a cover that she did a lot of songs that were originally written and performed by men, but she decided to do covers on them. And one that really resonated with me is "Don't Let It Bring You Down," because I really felt that it was, like I said, disheartening to be able to see for the first time or understand that there were some folks that really were acting as gatekeepers to education, and I couldn't understand why. And I had chosen to make education my life's work, and ensuring that students had access to education and that we worked together. I saw education, and I still strongly believe that in the United States, education really is a social justice issue, and it's one of the ways. There are others, but I think primarily still one of the ways that someone's livelihood can be improved, and the quality of life that for themselves, but for their families, gets improved. And so that was a challenge for me to see. It was also the time that I think I started to get reconnected or more connected back to my own heritage, and remembering and reminding myself that although I am light skinned and I could speak English fairly well, that at my core I still identified very much so as a Latina, as a Mexican woman. And so for me, nobody embodies that better, I think, than the music of Selena. She, I think, was the first. Her life was cut short, but she was really the first person that I would say that I recognized that was completely unapologetically Latina. She obviously in this picture, she wore her big hoops. She wasn't afraid to wear bright colors, and to not only sing in English and in Spanish, but she recognized the power of language. And so she was kind of, different. She'd grown up in the United States, raised, English as her first language, and had learned Spanish and recognized that so many people were craving that. And so around that time, I just felt like, wow, this is someone who goes around their life very confidently and very secure and sure of herself. And, it's okay to dream it. And one of her songs, just like she talks about, if you can see it and believe it, you can be it, and don't let anyone tell you that none of your dreams are impossible. So it's around that time that I realized I am going to not be afraid and have the courage to recognize when there are things and barriers that people are putting up, that are stopping that access to education, or that somehow it's affecting the experience of students. And I completely committed myself to this work, and set and found myself very much about, I know that this is the right thing to do. It's the best thing to do. There are so many students, first gen and historically underrepresented students, that need a voice and someone within the system to be able to help to ensure that processes, policies, how we do things, um, is, is accessible to them, and that they are not undue barriers to access to education, in particular higher education. And so for me, this is, this her music served as kind of that inspiration of being able to feel confident and keep moving forward. So once I graduated from the University of Vermont, I came back to California. One, because I was done with the cold and the snow. I didn't want any additional days that were, minus 15 degrees. I was kind of done with that. So I really wanted to return back to California, to Southern California. That would be my home. So I started working at Chapman University. I worked there for 3 years, and did a variety of different things. But it was really and I'm appreciative of the opportunity, from Chapman, to be able to have that be my first step, after graduating from school, to be able to work, and to help those students to develop some, as when I was there, I helped to develop social justice education, helped to make sure that we had some service learning projects that were connected, to service, and to the faith of, and so that was a good experience for me as well. So after that, I went to Portland State University. I moved out of California, even though I'd wanted to come back. I moved to Portland State. It was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. So I worked there for 5 years. And after being in Oregon, which was lovely and wonderful, once again, I came back to California and worked at UC Riverside. And I think for me, that set me on a trajectory and a path. I felt very confident that I wanted to be here in California, that I wanted to work in large public institutions, and that I wanted to serve students who had had similar experiences to my own, but also students that were first in their family, wanted to get an education to better their lives, to better the lives of their families, and really to to raise up the consciousness of how they lived, in their lives. And so for me, it just there was no better place to do it, and UCR was kind of that point. And then I've been at Cal State Fullerton for 7 years. I started working here, at Cal State Fullerton as the dean of students, and I would say that's, for me, I love the song by Alicia Keys, This Girl is on Fire. If you hadn't heard it, that's definitely an inspiration for me. If you get an opportunity, play it for yourself on a Monday morning, and tell yourself, yes, this is it. This is what I can do. For me, it's just been, ever since I got to Cal State Fullerton, the ability to serve the students, that we have at Cal State Fullerton is so wonderful. If you've ever heard our president, who I hold in the highest regard, he's been instrumental in making sure that we truly live up to our access to higher education, believes strongly in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I love to tell folks that we are third in the nation for awarding degrees to Latino women in particular. More African American and Latino women graduate from Cal State Fullerton than any of the other CSUs. And we're doing some really good work to ensure that all of our Titans are successful. We are closing the equity gap. There are 23 campuses in the system. We are the only large campus, that is above the 20,000 students. We have about 40,000 students, um, that is systematically closing the equity and achievement gap, which means our underrepresented students, are graduating, and we're closing that gap at the same rate as our white students. And that's because we're committing resources, we're committing our time, we're changing policies, and we're ensuring that everything that we do speaks to kind of the experience that I had, which is to make sure that those students who have not had a voice, that we often don't think about or hadn't thought about before, have access to higher education, have access to the resources to achieve their fullest potential. And I know for me, I absolutely have done that, at Cal State Fullerton. And so I wouldn't work anywhere else. I know this isn't necessarily a plug for for Cal State Fullerton, but it is for me in that I feel that I've been able to do this. I am that girl on fire, and I'm able to do it because of the place that I work, the leadership that exists there, and the students that I see every day. It has been difficult during this time of the pandemic, but we have done some really good work to ensure that even then we're providing services to our students. And I cannot wait to be back in person and resume some in-person services starting in June. Things are looking up. There's definitely light at the end of this pandemic tunnel, and we hope to be able to be back full roar in the fall with our students. So that they can have and continue their journey on campus and be able to feel that connection. Lastly, I just wanted to share some of my a playlist. I call it the Slay List. Some of the songs that I mentioned, and some others that I sprinkled in there that also helped to influence me and I think changed and added to the richness of my life. As I think about my different journey and experiences, these are some of the songs that I have deeply enjoyed. So I'll leave that up there if you want to take a picture of it, or if you just want to look at them and say, "Oh yeah, that's a good song." I enjoy you to, you know, I welcome you to explore them and enjoy those songs. And with that, I just want to say thank you once again for having me. Thank you, Teresa, for the invitation. I'm always available. I'd love to talk about Cal State Fullerton. If you know of a good student that you want to refer to us, please let me know. Feel free to connect. I'll also drop my email in the chat so folks want to connect. Absolutely happy to do that.
That's great. Thank you for such an inspirational program. I think it's so interesting with me as a musician, and my one of my degrees is in music, actually from Cal State Fullerton. You make us proud to be Titans, and I also have a connection with Chapman
Oh,
University, so it's kind of fun that we have some parallels there. Um, but as you talk about common languages and music as a common language, math as a common language, and those are things I think are really important. Um, I remind you to put your questions in the Q&A, but I love the theme that life should come with a soundtrack. As you are navigating the system and encouraging young women of color, of or whatever the circumstances, to encourage higher education, what piece of advice could you give someone who is looking at universities and applying and don't quite know whether or not they would qualify? What would you recommend to them, and what is your bit of advice to them?
I think the first thing I would say is higher education is for you. And to not think that it's not an option or a route that you can't take. If you feel like, and I often share this with students because the Office of Admissions and Outreach and Recruitment is also within the areas that I supervise, is that if it doesn't feel right now, then that's also okay. But to know that we're prepared to help meet what if there's a gap to help we are prepared to help meet that gap to make sure that you're going to be successful. We wouldn't admit you, at least at Cal State Fullerton, if we didn't think you were going to be successful. And I think, it's hard. I would say look at the different places that you want to go and ask those questions. How will you help me be successful? What kind of services and resources do you have? If I need extra tutoring, where can I find that? If I need extra support, for my classes, where can I find that? Will there be someone that I can connect to besides my advisor? And so I think for me, that in particular is good. And how can I involve my family? Because we often know that for a lot of our first generation students, it isn't just them that's coming to school, it's their families that they bring with them in some way, shape, or another that they're bringing with them, that are also attending. And so, what resources, who can my parents talk to? Or I've talked to many parents on the phone now and Zoom and in person about why college is important and why they should feel proud that their student wants to go to school. I think oftentimes in first generation families, there's this thought like, well, you graduated high school and now we need you to work, right? And to contribute to the family. And so what will you do with more schooling? So I've talked to a lot of parents about why the importance of school. And often I'm sharing with them, okay, so you want your, son or daughter to work. That's great. They can still do that and they can help contribute, but this is why it's important for them to go to school. And I talk to them about the longer arc of if you want them to have a good job, be happy, make money, the only means to do that in this country is if they get an education. And I talk to them about this is how much money, your student would make with just a high school degree. This is how much money they can make with a bachelor's. This is how much money they can make with, further degree, whether it's, medical, law, MBA, doctorate. This is what happens, and this is how they can help to improve not just their life, but your life. I would say 99.9% of the time, the parents come around and it's something that they've just never realized. No one's ever taken the time to talk to them about the importance of school. They often think like, oh, that's for other people who can afford it right away. That's for other reasons. And it's helped them to contextualize it that way. So I would say, come to school. There are many universities, but if you're unsure and you want to, scope around, feel around, I think Cal State Fullerton is it's a great landing place.
You make us all proud to be Titans. So we have a question that says, that is, we know that, and you talk a lot about the whole family being involved. When do you think it's too old to go back to school? And certainly for a Latina mom, perhaps, that's trying to be an example to her family, having them as themselves go to school and show that I can do it, so can you, would be a great example to set. So is there ever an age where it's too old to go back to school?
Absolutely never. There is never a time when you shouldn't want to, pick it back right up, or if you never went the first time, to be able to come to school. I think, for us, it's about being a lifelong learner, and what a better example for whether it's your own children or nieces and nephews or others in your family that you want to get back into school and learn and be part of that system. Because no matter when you get your degree, your opportunities and your chances are going to continue to improve your quality of life. It's one of the, as I said, it's one of the markers that can absolutely be a game changer for yourself and for your family. So no, we actually have a program at Cal State Fullerton that's called Adult Reentry. And so this is where we have a lot of parents or folks that have left and are now wanting to come back, or never, attended school during that age that is 18 to 21. And so we have a lot of folks. We even have a program for older adults called Ollie, which is our folks that are over 60 that want to take classes on campus. Obviously, it's not right now. It's on Zoom, but a very active group. They do wonderful events on campus. And what we've heard from a lot of our students who are that traditional age is that they get a lot of just life experience having older adults in the classroom, in particular some of our OLI students who come to the campus and take classes with them. They can offer just a wide range of lived life experience. And so I would say, please, if you're thinking about coming back, or re-engaging or engaging to go to school, absolutely do it. No better time to do it.
That's great. So Dr. Oseguera, this comment says, you make all Latinas in education and beyond extremely proud. That said, what's your personal advice on battling imposter syndrome? And they are commenting that they find the higher you climb, the worse it gets.
Yes, that. Thank you for the compliment. I'm not going to assume that everyone knows what imposter syndrome is, so I'll just share a little bit about what it is. It's definitely that feeling that you somehow don't belong, that there's other people that know more than you, that somehow you're the only one that doesn't know something, and that somehow people are going to find out that you're not that smart, that you certainly don't belong there. And I would say that has always been a part of the experience of people of color in this country. We are absolutely made to feel that somehow we may not belong, and to question ourselves. And that's something that we try to, I think, cope with and battle. We talk about it at Cal State Fullerton to help students, because it really is about confidence. And you can be made to feel different for a variety of reasons, not just as a person of color, but absolutely as women, right? There's some of us that have been the only woman in a meeting, in a room, so that doesn't change. I think for me, it's a matter of how I've coped with it. I think that will always be there. I'm very real about the fact that you will always, I think, in your life, feel at certain times and as an imposter, as that you don't belong there. So it's how you manage that. I wish I could, at least for me, I'll speak for myself. I wish I could tell you that it goes away, that it's not there, but absolutely, it still creeps up at times. I absolutely feel like an imposter, believe it or not. The thing that I am not so good at is public speaking. I get terrified of it. I get really nervous. So I'm glad that at least this is on camera and I don't have to see you all in person, because I probably would be a little bit even more nervous. But we're often, I think, going to feel that. It's just how you cope with it and learn how to, I think, at least for me, I learned to talk to myself about, right? I know the stuff. I've been working on, this is my life's work. I have good things to offer. And I should feel confident, and I shouldn't allow what others perceive of me or think of me to make me feel less than, because I am not. I definitely talk to myself. I think you also have to connect to people. One of the things that I have found very valuable is to have a group of, and you're doing this, Teresa, by this program, right? Having another group of women, having a group of people that can help you to kind of almost be your cheerleaders, and to be a source of support. And I think that's really important, to kind of build out that network of connecting to other people that are doing either the same kind of work that you, or that feel the same way, so that you can help each other, and to uplift each other. That has, at least for me, has also served to make sure I'm like, no, because I'm really good about giving, in particular, my female friends, my girlfriends, like, I'm their cheerleader. I'm like, no, you can do this, you got this. And so, you know, I think it's wonderful. Why wouldn't I want that for myself as well, to have that group, and that connection? So I would say find a group of women that help to uplift you and to be connected to you, as one of the mechanisms that you can fight off that imposter syndrome.
Great words of advice. And I think no matter where you are in your career, and no matter where you are
Yes.
in the whole spectrum, that you really do need that partnership. You need your friends to be there with you. I know I find that with myself and with the close friends that I have, and I would think that goes with most people. With Thank you so much for your comments today. Looks like we may have one more program. It says that you are truly an inspiration to individuals and those undocumented. Thank you for sharing your struggles and making it humorous as well. So, with that, do you have any other final comments or questions before, or words of wisdom that you can leave our group today?
No, I thank you, Teresa, for the invitation. I really appreciate the opportunity to just to be able to come and share a little bit about myself, but also um, just to hopefully connect with more folks. And as I said, I dropped my information. I'm always happy to do a one-on-one, and I just hope to continue to keep moving forward, and do additional good work for our students, and for Orange County. So thank you.
Great. So a great segue as we look forward to our next week's speaker, next Thursday, March 25th at 11 a.m. We are really privileged to have our Assemblywoman Sharon Corke Silva as our speaker. Sharon Corke Silva represents the 65th Assembly District in the state of California, and really believes in women in being engaged and being empowered. So she will be presenting on threading the needle, navigating local, county, and state issues. And certainly, as a representative of us on Fullerton City Council and now in the State Assembly, it's a really great opportunity for us. Our second speaker next week is Danielle Alcantar. She is a mental health therapist from Providence St. Joseph's Medical Center. She presents and really approaches some of the mental health challenges that women are feeling today, particularly with the pandemic, being isolated from some of the individuals that would normally be supporting them. Certainly, we all realize that as we move forward right now, we are challenged by not having that work outlet, and we're working much more in an isolated situation. So she is really going to have an opportunity to speak with all of us. So we look forward to having you. If you have not registered for that program, please make sure you do. We will be sending all of you out reminders if you've not. We look forward to you joining us for another inspirational program. Thank you again, Dr. O. It was really great to have you on board today. Thank you to all of our sponsors, and we will see you again next week. So thank you very much for an inspirational program and a great kickoff for our S.H.E conference this year. Thank you, everybody.